Hi teacher, my name is Angie Cardona and today I'm going to analyze Louise Muller from the story of an hour by Kate Chopin. So I want to explain how her experience reflects social and gender expectation in the 19th century. Through her reaction to the supposed death of her husband, we can see a strong criticism of traditional marriage and the limits placed on women at the time. First, let's talk about gender roles. In the 19th century, women were expected to be devoted wives, obedient, and emotionally dependent on their husbands. Marriage was seen as their main purpose in life. At the beginning of the story, Louise reacts the way society expects her to react. The text says she wept with a sudden will abandonment in his sister's arms. So basically, she cries deeply and openly like a loving and loyal wife. But then, well, when she's alone in her room, something changes. She begins to feel something different. The text says she whispered again and again, free, free, free. This quote is very important because behind the image of a loving wife, Louise actually feels limited. Her husband death does not only mean lose, it also means freedom. So this shows that even when a marriage is not cruel, it can still control a woman's will and her independence. Now let's talk about the moral dilemma. Louise admits that her husband was kind and that she had loved him sometimes. That word sometimes is very powerful. It shows that her feelings were complex. The story also says there will be no powerful will bending hers. In other words, no one will control her decisions anymore. Well, this is where Chopin criticizes society. At that time, people believed that a husband had natural authority over his wife. Even if his intentions were good, he still had power over her life. So this creates a moral questions. It is wrong for a woman to feel happy about her independence. From society's point of view back then, yes, it would be wrong. But from Louis' personal point of view, it makes sense. She wants to live for herself. And this tension shows social hypocrisy. Society values marriage, but it ignores the loss of personal identity that women may experience inside it. Now, let's talk about psychological depth. This story is realistic because it focuses on everyday life and on Lisa's inner thoughts. There are no big dramatic events. The most important actions happens inside her mind. When she looks out the window and says the new spring life in the trees and patches of blue sky, these details symbolize her emotional awakening. Nature represents renewal and new opportunities. At first, she feels afraid of this new emotion, but slowly she accepts it. This emotional change feels very human and very real. So basically, Chopin shows deep psychological analysis, and we see Lucy's transformation step by step. Finally, at the end of the story, her husband comes back alive. He was never in the accident. When Louise sees him, she dies. The doctors say she died of the joy that kills. But well, we understand the irony. It was probably not joy. It was the shock of losing her freedom again. This ending reinforces the social criticism. Society will never understand her true feelings. They prefer to believe she died because she loved her husband too much, instead of accepting that she desired independence. So yeah, in conclusion, Louis Mahler represents the gender restrictions of the 19th century at the conflict between social duty and personal desire. Through her experience, Kate Chopin criticizes traditional marriage and shows the need of female autonomy. Even though the story happens in just 1 hour, it reveals deep social, cultural, and moral issues about identity, freedom, silent oppression in everyday life. Okay? Thank you so much for your attention. Bye bye.